Cam Heyward deciding that he will not show up to OTAs, which is voluntary, and I think that's the biggest thing that you have to point out right now. He is set to seek a contract extension with the Pittsburgh Steelers. The latest news is that he is in talks with the Pittsburgh Steelers, or at least told Steelers now that he has had those talks with the Steelers about a contract extension. He plans to play several more years. He's 35 years old. He's set to make $22 million in 2024, but he's not going to show up until the team says, okay, here's a new deal and we have struck something with you moving forward. I got a lot of thoughts on this, on why it probably makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but at the same time, how if they're not looking to do it, I totally understand their side of the argument here. But I want to hear your thoughts first. This came out about 20 minutes before the schedule release last night. Don't you love how that happens? It always seems strategically planned to just be like, all right, all eyes are just starting to get ready. Boom, let's drop a bomb. And this bomb was Cam Heyward. What were your thoughts on, I guess we'll call it a holdout. I want to call it controversy because I think that's a better word for it. Not necessarily a holdout yet, but him not showing up to OTAs, looking for a contract extension at 35 years old.
I mean, it's the same thing we see around the NFL, and we're constantly reminded this is a business, and these players, they have to go into business for themselves sometimes. You look at Cam Heyward, who is considered to be one of the biggest team players in the entire National Football League. He still has to do things for his family, for his personal sake. And coming off of a year with an injury, he wants a little bit of security. And I understand that on his part. From the Steelers side of things, he's 35 years old and coming off of a year with an injury. So this is a guy that has held up a lot throughout his career. He has been a rock on that Steelers defense. So that has to be taken into it, but you're paying the player for what he's going to do and not for what he's done if you're the Steelers. And what he's going to do is a question mark because how healthy can he remain, especially in that position on the Steelers defensive line? They have a couple guys in Benton, and now we'll see what they can do with Logan Lee as they just drafted him. So they have some answers there for potential replacements. Again, there's a lot of a gap between those guys, but it is certainly, like you mentioned, the timing is very, very, I wouldn't say coincidental. I think it was strategic.
Yeah, strategic is a good word. It was 100. There was no chance that Jeremy Fowler got that text right then and there. There's 100% chance that Jeremy Fowler got that text 2 days ago and said, don't let it out until 20 minutes before the schedule release. And he went, all right, sounds good. Because ironically, coincidentally, I guess, strategically, whatever word you want to use, ESPN had a story written ready to go about how Cam Heyward was not going to attend OTAs. You're telling me that just happened as it was? No chance. I'll say this. I agree with you 100%. You got to look at it from both sides. Cam Heyward's side, he's done everything he possibly can for the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. He's an all-pro defensive tackle. He's been your defensive captain for years upon years. He's a borderline Hall of Famer if he has maybe another really, really solid year under his belt before he calls it quits. But at the same time, he's 35 years old. And if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you got to look at it. And where does the conversation start? Because Cam Heyward's set to make $22 million in 2024, which already seems like a high price tag for a guy coming off of a major injury, coming off of surgery, who had a down year last year, who I get it, like is back-to-back 10-sack seasons the 2 years prior, but still a guy that is aging, and you just never know when that cliff is coming. You never know when it's time to hang it up. And most guys, especially guys like Cam Heyward, who they just live and breathe football. They are football, and you could see that they are football. They kind of push it too far. They go 1 year too long, and the Steelers got to prepare for that 1 year too long. They don't want to pay a guy 1 year past his prime. And to be honest, the Steelers do this all the time. They look at guys, Troy Polamalu, Hines Ward, and say, buddy, we're ready to move on. We're going to force you out of here because you could either go sign somewhere else or you could retire, but we're not going to give you another contract extension. Typically, that comes next year. For Cam Heyward, it's kind of being proactive, or he's being proactive, being this year and saying, look, let's get a contract extension done now so that next year I'm not forced into that situation. Ben Roethlisberger was another one. He's probably the latest. For the Steelers, I think it makes a lot of sense if you think Cam Heyward has 2 more years in him. If you think he's got this year and next year, extend him for 2 more years. Give him until 2026. In 2026, backload the hell out of this deal so that next year you're giving him, I don't know, $15-16 million, a really nice signing bonus. He's making good money. Maybe you could lower his cap hit this year. And then in 2026, he's set to make a bunch of money. but none of it's guaranteed. And if he's ready to walk away, he's ready to walk away. And then you feel good about it. I think the Steelers can do that. I think if the Steelers are in a situation where they'd like to lower their cap hit right now, it makes a lot of sense for them to toss a contract extension his way and say, look, at $22 million is way too much money to pay Cam Heyward at 35 years old in 2024. So let's lower that number to whatever, 15, $16 million. We'll give him a nice signing bonus and we'll keep him around for 2 more years. But I don't know what Cam's side of this is. I don't know if Cam Hayward's looking at this saying, I want a pay raise, because if Cam Hayward's taking a pay raise, I mean, that doesn't make any sense for the Steelers whatsoever. You're not going to pay a guy who's 36 years old, $25 million a year. That's just not going to happen. And Cam Heyward, quite frankly, is not a Chris Jones. He's not a Jeffrey Simmons. He's not a Christian Wilkins. He's Cam Heyward. At one point, he was one of the best defensive tackles in football. He still probably is one of the best defensive tackles in football, but he's 35 years old. So you have to look at it and say, at what point are you no longer going to be one of the best defensive tackles in football? And just like you said, you pay a guy for what they are going to be, not what they are. And Cam Heyward, quite frankly, is riding the line of eventually he is no longer going to be what he is right now. And every year you push that out, you take a risk. Do you think Cam is looking for a pay raise? And if he is looking for a pay raise, do you think the Steelers would even consider giving him one?
Again, I'm not Cam Heyward. I haven't talked to Cam Heyward before in my life, but I would think that he's not looking for a pay raise. If anything, I would think that he's looking to avoid what happened to Troy and what happened to Ben. He's watched that happen. I think he was still on the team, or at least was close to being on the team whenever it happened to Hines. He's seen it happen before. If he wants to end his career on his terms, he's trying to get in early. So I don't think he's trying to get that last dime out of the Rooneys. I think he's just trying to secure a little bit of security for himself to say, hey, I want to end my career on my terms. Let's extend this contract out. That way I know I have 3 years to make my decision.
Yeah, I could see that. And I think that there's a middle ground here. Like, I think it makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers to say, let's work out a team-friendly deal where, but that's the side of it, is I think Cam, to some degree, has to recognize his position in this and understand that he isn't a guy who has all the negotiating power. I mean, think about it like this. If Cam Heyward hits the open market next season, he's not getting $20 million a year. That's not happening. His price tag is going to be much lower outside of Pittsburgh than it is in Pittsburgh. And I think that if he could look at it and say, I understand where I am, I understand where the team needs to be, let's make a team-friendly deal, then it secures it. I mean, this is everybody. If you have the opportunity to make the money, you make the money. I am always pro player. But at 35 years old, if you're looking for, I don't know, $20 million a year, unfortunately, you could go get an Ndamukong Suh, a Calais Campbell, and it might not be Cam Heyward, but you're not taking a very significant step backwards, and you're paying $5-6 million, $7 million. And in the reality of it, that's just too cheap to look at Cam and say, we're going to extend you for massive amounts of money. Again, I think that a deal could happen. If I had to guess, I think a deal does happen. I think that the Steelers do extend Cam Heyward for another 2 years, and they give him somewhat of a team-friendly deal. They keep him over what he would get on the open market. They backload it so that they could just toss on void years if they need to and spread it out. But I expect the Steelers to make this work for both sides. But I also expect Cam Heyward to not make this the easiest on him or on the Steelers and kind of look for maybe more than what he's worth, which stinks because I don't want to say that about Cam. There's a lot of guys on this roster that I would argue, don't ask for more than you're worth. Deontay Johnson was probably one of them. He was probably going to be the next. Cam Heyward's a guy where it's like, dude, you've done everything you could for this organization. You have been the face of this franchise for a long time. You've been a defensive captain. You've kept this locker room together in times where nobody else could. You've done great things. You've built a community here. Like, you are the city of Pittsburgh, and you deserve your money. But sometimes you got to be realistic about the situation, and it's always a business. And Cam Heyward, unfortunately, is on the wrong side of the line, wrong side of the age limit when it comes to this business. Again, I expect it to happen. I don't expect it to end up being a massive deal or something that breaks the bank for Cam. More of just a, look, we made this happen. Cool. You get 2 more years of quality football, and there it is. So we'll see what happens. again, OTAs, you could call it a holdout if you want. He always shows up to OTAs, so it is definitely something to monitor. Once you get into mini camp, we'll see what happens there. If it goes into training camp, I'd be very surprised. I don't know if I'd expect it, but I think that's when, okay, maybe some drama's stirring up here and things are getting a little troublesome in the city of Pittsburgh if Cam does not show up by training camp. But for right now, we'll keep it tame. We'll keep it calm.